Oh, this is the link to their response. All right, cool. Thank you. So this is them disputing the claim that most of their investment comes from the grant as well as the VCs and such, citing that 65% comes from the shop, ad revenue, and Patreon. So they are still independent, not primarily funded by VCs. So organizational sponsors like Gates Foundation and Open Philanthropy represent 13%. The fact that you're saying sponsor in this, though, means that you should play by sponsor rules, and instead of just relegating that to the last 20 seconds, it needs to be in the front of the video and in the description. That is how it's always been done. That's how it should be done. I think that's still a very fair critique. You're even calling them a sponsor here. So this is now talking about the Open Philanthropy one, and they're claiming that it was only used for translating videos and creating for TikTok, which I think makes a lot of sense. I imagine they would go to something like that to translate all the videos to branch out into the big platforms like TikTok and reach a wider audience from different languages. It includes 2 sponsored videos. And it represents a small amount of their revenue. I think this is a fair point, but this is something that a lot of video game journalists always rely on. For example, like when you get a review copy of a game from a developer you have a good relationship with, you're less likely to give it a harsh review because you don't want to burn that bridge. Right? So that's why people view it as a conflict of interest. If you're being sponsored, at least in part, by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the topic you're talking about kind of touches on some things they're involved in, you're less likely to be critical of it. That's why people view it more as like a conflict thing, which is why it should be disclosed earlier on that this is in part funded by some of that money. Now, of course, I'm not saying they are. I have no way of knowing if they are, but that's why it's perceived that way. Thanks to the anonymous gift sub and the resub dummy and Tommy. I still think this is a fair point. I understand that it's probably, and in fact, I know it is a pretty good source, and I know it's an aggregator for a lot of information, but at the very least, I still think for this scale, they should be using multiple sources for these things, instead of just relying on the same one. Especially because, as they mention, it is at least receiving funding from the same foundation that they have as well. So at the very least, just for the sake of optics, why not use other sources to corroborate the data? It shouldn't be that hard. I imagine there's plenty of other equally reliable sources for a lot of the topics they want to cover. Are they in trouble? It depends. For a lot of people, this ruins their ability to take the channel seriously and believe everything they're being told by the channel. And for others, it's viewed as a nothing burger, where it's like, well, this just kind of means this whole video was just a hit piece where optimism equal propaganda. And I'm not saying either side's right or wrong here, because it is kind of an interesting situation. I think the video made some good points, but then some bad ones, like way off ones. Oh, here, they're even talking about using others. So then just also cite that. I feel like there's nothing wrong with citing that as well, in addition to these, so that way it doesn't look like it's just all coming from our world. Also, just cite from your independent fact checkers and their sources. You immediately tackle the problem. If you're already doing more than just using this, then cite them as well. I feel like that's only fair to them too. They do cite it? Where? I even went into the, which one was it? This one? And it's all our world. So why not just also drop them? One video. Okay, I guess we'll go to another one, but even still, I'm assuming they also use their fact checkers for that one, right? Why not just cite them there? First link. You missed it. First link of what? Of the video I was just on?
Since
Well, no, this is where that guy got all the our world, and here's two others. But our world is the one that pops up so often, which is what the whole video was talking about. I think this is the one where there's 81 cited sources and 27 are our world. So why not just also include the other ones that corroborated this data? Is what I'm saying. Why are we not talking about that? Because it's a good source. I get that, but you're not understanding. As they also admit, it is partially funded by the Gates Foundation, which they also receive funding from. So why not, for the full sake of like everything being, honky-dory, also confirm it with their fact checkers that I'm assuming they already used to do that, and then just cite that here as well as an additional source. It's a good source. Why would they go to a less funded source? Because they are receiving funding from the same source. It is a bad look. If I am making a video about Impossible Meat and it being great, why am I going to only use Impossible Meat to corroborate my data? It would look bad. Which is what this whole fucking thing stemmed from. And it could have been avoided if they also just cited their fact checkers instead of only using our world for these certain instances. I get they use other sources, but when a third of it comes from the same source that is also funded by your sponsor, it looks bad. What are we not understanding? This is what it all boiled down to. They agree like a paragraph down. I haven't even finished, but they are literally agreeing from everything I've seen here. But they're also giving very clear evidence that they are not primarily funded by these foundations, these organizations. They're not primarily sponsor funded. They are independent, which immediately blasts home the idea that they are a propaganda machine when their financial incentives don't make sense. If only 4% of their revenue comes from these organizations, why the fuck would they bend the knee to them as opposed to the people that actually fund them? And here, right here, you're right. Even agreeing with that. It's just a matter of being a little more open with it. Instead of jumping to this extreme, it could have been this one. Literally what I am fucking saying. Holy shit. Very interesting, though. They're literally not propaganda, though. Yeah, this video didn't make any convincing arguments or compelling arguments to convince me that they're a propaganda machine. But it did point out things that I do think they have done improperly. Nothing that I think ruins the channel for me or anything, but definitely some things that I think they should work on. Would they be Again, I don't... Just... Why am I going to explain it for the fifth fucking time? At this point, just watch it yourself. Christ. I have summarized it like fucking 15 times at this point. The guy made the video for clout. I don't know the channel. I don't know anything about the channel. I think the video could have been made from a place of like genuine concern for the truthfulness of information, but then lost the plot halfway through and started to immediately jump to the conclusion that it must all be propaganda because some things were a little improperly handled. Again, I think one of the big glaring things is he mentions the carbon emissions video, and he cites a source that didn't exist when the video was made. That is not a fair critique. That's not a fair point. That is just a wrong point. You can't critique a video for something that didn't exist when it was made. Like, again, there were things in that video that I think were way off mark, but then also he did make a couple, I think, very good points about how this channel should be improved in regards to its transparency, especially with its sponsors and their sources. It really boils down mainly to that so far, at least for me. Maybe you might feel differently. But to me, it just highlighted that this channel needs to be more transparent when it is funded at least partially by an organization, and also making it seem like they're less reliant on just one source for the majority of their information. I think this was a very insightful conversation, if nothing else. This was a very interesting topic all around. And I think this was probably not the right channel to target, but there are actual channels that are propaganda machines. Plenty. So I think it does highlight like an issue, albeit a bit incorrectly, with the one that it chose. I think it's an interesting topic.